Hello, and welcome all to Movie Hunter, the show that tracks down the quality of all sorts of movies. My name is Hunter, and today in the 9th episode, our target is Spider-Man 2, produced by Columbia Pictures, Marvel Enterprises, and Laura Ziskin Productions, and distributed by Sony Pictures Releasing. Spider-Man 2 released on June 30th, 2004, and earned nearly $800 million on a budget of $200 million. Immediately after the first film, the second began production, and luckily it didn't have nearly as long of a hiatus as the first. Though that doesn't mean that it didn't have its fair share of changes, including Gwen Stacy being considered a character to introduce, and the film having the title The Amazing Spider-Man, after the character's prominent comic book title, and the one that would later be used for its reboot. There was also trouble with Tobey Maguire, as he had been suffering from back pain, which caused concern for a recasting, in which Jake Gyllenhaal was strongly considered to replace him. Though the recast would ultimately be unnecessary, Jake Gyllenhaal, however, would return to the franchise in 2019 in Spider-Man Far From Home as the villain Mysterio, and Tobey Maguire's back pain would make its way into the film in a scene where Peter Parker complains about his back after slamming into a car. Along with Tobey Maguire, the film saw the return of cast members including Kirsten Dunst, James Franco, Rosemary Harris, J.K. Simmons, Willem Dafoe, Cliff Robertson, and of course Stan Lee. Additional cast members also include Alfred Molina and Donna Murphy. Sam Raimi returns as director, and Laura Ziskin returns as producer alongside Avi Arad. Bob Murawski returns as editor, and Danny Elfman returns as composer. The screenplay was by Alvin Sargent, and the story was by Alfred Go, Miles Miller, and Michael Chabon. The cinematography was by Bill Pope, and the film was based on the character Spider-Man by Stan Lee and Steve Ditko. The film was greatly received, doing nearly as well as the first in the box office, and breaking many records, and many praised it for surpassing the original. The film also got a video game titled Spider-Man 2, not to be confused with the more recent game of the exact same name, and the film was nominated for 48 different awards, of which it won 15 of. The duology of movies would also see one more sequel, Spider-Man 3. The film follows Peter Parker 2 years after the first film, trying to balance being Spider-Man and saving lives, and Peter Parker and his friends and family, jobs, college classes, and rent, with people in both of his lives calling him lazy because they only see half of his life and can never know about the other half. This is especially harsh for him as the people closest to him are suffering. Mary Jane struggles with wanting to be with Peter, and Peter secretly wanting to be with her, but ends up getting engaged. Harry Osborn still blames Spider-Man for his father's death and tries to get Peter to tell him where he is because Peter takes Spider-Man's pictures for the newspaper. And Aunt May is struggling financially, as well as with the loss of Uncle Ben. Meanwhile, Peter meets and befriends a scientist named Otto Octavius, who is constructing a fusion power machine. Later, at the demonstration, the machine goes horribly wrong, and causing destruction and killing Otto's wife. The two tentacles that Otto uses to control the machine start to gain control over him. With the tentacles gaining control, Otto decides to secretly build a better machine by robbing banks and gains the name Dr. Octopus. Peter, under all the stress, decides to abandon Spider-Man and enjoy the civilian life. He performs no more heroic acts and is able to more actively be there for the people in his life. However, he comes across a burning building and can't fight the urge to rescue the people inside, but ends up failing to save the other person he didn't know was in there. Thinking he could have saved both as Spider-Man, he resumes his position and decides that being Spider-Man is more important than his personal happiness. Dr. Octopus confronts Harry Osborn about a material that he needs for his machine, and Harry agrees to supply it if he can bring him Spider-Man alive. Dr. Octopus is able to by kidnapping Mary Jane, and Harry unmasks Spider-Man to discover Peter's secret. Harry, shocked, is unable to kill Peter, and Peter convinces Harry to tell him where Dr. Octopus is. Spider-Man arrives, but not before the machine is activated and threatened to blow up half of New York City. Spider-Man and Dr. Octopus fight for a while, ending in Peter revealing his identity to Otto and Mary Jane. This gives Otto the strength to do the right thing and drown the machine in the ocean, killing himself with it. Mary Jane abandons her wedding to be with Peter, despite the risks, and Harry discovers his father's Green Goblin gear and his father's spirit demanding that Harry get revenge. Let's start by talking about Peter. One thing that I think is very important to a Spider-Man story is Peter's struggles of balancing his normal life and his superhero one. This is often pointed towards when talking about the success of Spider-Man, and it's not hard to see why. It's nice to be able to relate to the main character and their realistic struggles. The first Spider-Man film did this greatly, and luckily the sequel did great too, to an even greater degree. Peter's struggles with his normal life is very well realized here, and with the weight on his shoulders from his responsibilities can really be felt. His Aunt May struggling financially, and with the loss of Uncle Ben. His friends Mary, Jane, and Harry are both suffering because of his absence. He lost a job and is struggling to keep his other job. He isn't paying rent on time, and his grades are lowering. On top of it all, people are calling him lazy, despite the fact that Peter is anything but. However, they can never know that because he would be giving up his secret identity if he did. Peter's arc of deciding that he doesn't want to be Spider-Man anymore is very satisfying, and you feel the weightlessness when he doesn't have the responsibilities of Spider-Man. However, you also feel for him when he knows that he has to continue being Spider-Man because of what Uncle Ben told him. With great power comes great responsibility. He was gifted this great power, and he must now accept the responsibility. My favorite scene is when Peter fully realizes the scope of what this means, and he looks out the window and says, "Am I not supposed to have what I want, what I need?" This is probably the best summation of the dilemma the film deals with. A very interesting moral dilemma this film chooses to deal with, and ending with Peter accepting his responsibility despite the degrading nature of it really encapsulates the idea of Spider-Man. Another high point is the villain of the film, Dr. Octopus. Personally, I really like Spider-Man villains, and so as much as I liked Green Goblin in the first film, it's really cool to see a new villain. Though obviously I have to mention the fact that they didn't really have a choice because they killed off Green Goblin, but regardless. Dr. Octopus doesn't have the greatest or most in-depth story that I can really contribute meaningfully to, so I'll just analyze the main well-written story beats. Seeing Otto befriending Peter before his villain arc gives a very nice dynamic to the two, and manages to be different enough from Norman in the first film, who basically does the same thing. Dr. Octopus serves as a great threat to Spider-Man, especially during the crisis that he is going through. Seeing him become controlled by the tentacles is a good enough villain arc for him, though it is somewhat a lesser thing Norman went through, but it does the job still. And of course, Dr. Octopus redeeming himself in the final battle, ending in his death, is a really good scene, and is heavily complimented for good reason. I don't really have much more to say on it. He is a good villain for the film, and I don't really feel like I have much more to contribute to the conversation that hasn't already been said. Though of course, he does cause the subway scene at the end, which is simply phenomenal, for all the reasons that people have discussed time and time again. I suppose Otto also has a sort of relevance to Peter's dilemma, as they are both immensely talented people, whose talents end up taking a toll on them, with Dr. Octopus showing a potential dark reality for Peter. Otto's ignorance in advancing his power ends up taking the life of his wife, and leads to him easily being manipulated into finishing what he started. Though I do feel like this point could have been better expanded upon or realized in a couple more scenes. but to the point where I more so appreciate what Otto does as a villain rather than as a comparison to Peter, but the connection is still there. Next, I'd like to talk about what is arguably the third main point of the film, and that is Mary Jane. I have conflicting feelings on how this is. I really liked how the first film ended with Peter and Mary Jane both wanting to be with each other, but Peter having to reject her because of his responsibilities to keep her safe from Spider-Man's enemies. Now, please excuse me, as I don't watch romance movies at all, so I have no idea what is considered normal or not in a romance movie, so please excuse any inaccuracies in me trying to decipher this part of the film. I think, similar to the first film, the romance between Peter and Mary Jane is well written and well developed, while also not taking center stage over the Spider-Man and Peter stuff. But I do feel like it starts in a weird place, with Peter reading poetry to impress Mary Jane, but I was under the impression that she already liked him. I've thought about this from the other angle of Peter sort of going through denial of wanting to be with Mary Jane, but I can't help but think that this is me just explaining things that aren't true, and that if are true, should have been expressed by the movie, not me. Regardless, after that, I think the romance is well done and fits with the character arc Peter goes through. Mary Jane leaving her wedding to be with Peter I find really overdone and overdramatized, but Mary Jane, after learning that Peter is Spider-Man, deciding that she is willing to take the risk to be with Peter is sweet. On top of that, it is a satisfying conclusion to Peter's story, with him finally getting something after his hard work as both Spider-Man and Peter, and it not coming from his own forced decision-making is nice for both the story and for Peter. I'd also like to briefly mention the other two main characters from the first film that become more of secondary ones in this film, but still have some noteworthy talking points. Firstly, Aunt May. I really like how Aunt May finally gets some more time to grieve over the loss of Uncle Ben. In the first film, it was really just about how it affected Peter, but here we get to see how Aunt May is dealing with it, and it does a lot to flesh out her character. In the scene where Peter confesses to Aunt May how he accidentally caused Uncle Ben's death is so sad. Aunt May being upset but never saying a mean word to Peter, and then coming to forgive and continue to love Peter, is such a nice character moment for her. Also, her scene where she pushes Peter towards continuing to be Spider-Man, without actually knowing that he is Spider-Man, of course, is a greatly written scene that I really don't think I could analyze here in a timely manner, while still giving the scene justice. Secondly, Harry, who does not get much development in this movie, and is mostly here as a reminder of his existence, likely because of the third movie, but I guess we'll see. Harry's continuing craziness over killing Spider-Man is a great setup for the next movie, which I hope it will deliver on. And the final scene with discovering his father's Green Goblin stuff is a great cliffhanger. Of course, I have to mention the fact that upon Harry finding out Spider-Man's identity, Peter could have easily explained that he didn't kill his father, and that his father accidentally impaled himself with the glider that he had control over. But I can forgive it, as Peter was in a rush to save Mary Jane and half of New York City. I guess the final question is if this movie is better than the first. When the film came out, it was infinitely praised for surpassing the original, and that sentiment is still largely held today. I personally think that I prefer the original, but both films are really great. I think that this one has lower lows, but higher highs, making the first one just more consistent. Both are really good though at the end of the day, so I think that trying to find which one is better is not really particularly important. I give Spider-Man 2 a 9 out of 10 for being a great continuation to the original. The film is funny, has a good story and villain, and a really good dynamic between Peter and Spider-Man. This film both serves as a great follow-up and a great setup for the sequel. I haven't seen the third movie in a long time, and to be honest, I don't think I've ever even seen the whole thing, or at least paid attention to it. That being said, I have heard about how hilarious the third movie is, but also terrible it is, so I don't know. I guess we'll see. Well, that's all folks. I hope you enjoyed, and feel free to share any opinions you had on the movie. A new episode releases each week, so stay tuned to see which film I cover next. And in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.